Now, from the studios of Into Tomorrow in Miami, this is ITTV.
Our next guest is a manufacturer of an FDA-approved medical device called Cervella for non-drug treatment of anxiety and insomnia. We found it fascinating, so we thought, let's invite the president and CEO of Innovative Neurological Devices, Bart Waclawik, to join us on the program. Bart, I hope I got your last name right. Welcome Into Tomorrow.
You got it perfectly. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. Tell me a little bit about the company first, Innovative Neurological Devices, and then let's get into the product itself.
Yeah, we are a new company, startup, you might call it. We were established in 2018 and received our FDA clearance or approval for the Cervella medical device in 2019. As you mentioned, it is a medical device aimed at solving anxiety and insomnia problems.
Now, are they one and the same, you find, typically? Folks that have anxiety issues also seem to have insomnia problems. I know that I have trouble falling asleep sometimes, but I don't think it's anxiety. Maybe it is. So I'm wondering, how do the two relate?
Yes, that's a very good question. So if the anxiety is neurological in nature, so in other words, the insomnia then matches with the anxiety. So, for instance, let's just say that you had a back pain. Well, that's not neurological in nature. That is a problem with, say, arthritis or something like that. So you wouldn't be able to sleep. But if the problem is related to being anxious, then of course, very often you will not be able to sleep, and therefore you will have comorbid insomnia.
Oh, wow. Okay. That makes sense by all means. Tell me then a little bit about the device itself. How did you come about deciding to create such a thing?
Actually, it's a personal story, if you will. My oldest son has been several years ago diagnosed with anxiety disorder, and the typical first-line treatment for those disorders is to be put on antidepressants. Oh. And unfortunately, in his case, the antidepressants, A, were not working very well, and B, were causing a lot of side effects. To the point where my son actually withdrew from school, and it was really not going very well. So I naturally, as a father, as a parent, tried to look for some alternatives. And there are some alternatives like cognitive-based therapies. But also look for other non-drug options, and come to find out that there are classes of neurological devices called cranial electrotherapy stimulators, CES for short, that transmit a very small amount of electricity to patients' brain. And over many years of study, they've been found to be successful in treating the anxiety and, of course, insomnia also, if the patient suffers from that also. Wow. So I ordered my son this device, and lo and behold, it was working. It was working very well. And slowly but surely, my son has kind of reintegrated himself back into the society. But the other devices, the device works by transmitting electricity across the brain. So you have to have electrodes placed across the brains, typically on the skull or earlobes or the mastoid, which is the area right behind the ears. And in the case of my son, he used a device that the electrodes were clipped to his earlobes, and he basically told me is that it's not very comfortable, and more importantly, he noticed that a lot of the anxiety occurred at school or some public settings, and he said, well, there's no way I am going to be saw in public with a device attached to with electrodes dangling off my forehead or the earlobes. Yeah. He said, I'm going to look like a Frankenstein. Yeah. So basically that gave me the light bulb in my head, and went on working on a device that has the electrodes integrated in the cushions of headphones. So basically the patient looks like he or she is wearing headphones, but in fact, the patient is getting a medical treatment.
Oh, terrific. Well, that's something that a good father would say, I got to solve this problem, because clearly the device is helping him, but not having to wear it, and especially in a social environment. So that's really cool. I want to remind our radio audience that they've got to come see the video. So we're showing you what we're talking about at intotomorrow.com as Bart is discussing this. So apparently that's the reason why you decided to go with headphones for your Cervella device?
Well, for a couple of reasons. One is, a lot of the anxiety patients obviously are very self-conscious. So through the patient study, we were told, it's like that patients told us that they don't want to be perceived as receiving a treatment. Unfortunately, the anxiety still carries some stigma. It's unfortunate, but it is that way. So patients wanted to basically be indistinguishable from everybody else. So that was the reason for the headphones. And the second thing is, in order for the treatment to be effective, patients really need to use the device daily, at least initially. And to get the compliance of the patients, you really want to make a device that can integrate into the patient's life. And we thought, with everybody using headphones nowadays, that's made it more natural because those headphones are not just dummy-looking headphones. They're fully functioning Bluetooth noise-canceling headphones, so people can listen to music. And in fact, the noise canceling is part of the treatment, because when you have an anxiety attack, you want to kind of eliminate external stimuli. So basically put yourself in a quiet environment so that you can kind of rebase yourself. And that's where the noise canceling also comes during the treatment.
So how soon, typically, Bart, can the patient begin to feel better if they're starting to use a Cervella device and getting in the habit of taking advantage of it? Is there a time frame that most people start to say, wow, this is really working?
Typically, we see that initial response, meaning that the patient will actually figure out whether he or she is a respondent to this device, will occur within a 2 to 4 week period. And that's why, one of the reasons we give people 30-day trial period is because within the 30 days, the patient should be definitely able to figure out whether the device essentially is working for the patient.
Okay, good. Now, does this require a prescription? Is this something that somebody can order otherwise? We got to work with the doctor for it. Tell me about that procedure.
Yes, in the United States, the FDA requires that the patient obtains a prescription or device authorization from a licensed healthcare provider. The patient can go to her doctor or nurse practitioner provider that is able to write a prescription. We also offer through our independent licensed provider, we just started that recently, an ability for patient to obtain the authorization at no cost.
Oh, that's very helpful. So maybe if they know they have an issue, or someone in your family has the issue, and you don't have the opportunity to get to the doctor, or your primary says, I'm not familiar with this or don't know, then apparently we can visit your site and you can kind of help us through that process?
That's right. Through the website, we contracted with a licensed provider that is allowed to screen the patient and then provide, if the patient qualifies, to provide them the authorization that then allows us to legally sell the device to the patient.
Oh, terrific. Now, I assume that this is something that one would wear in order to help fall asleep. Do they wear it at night, for example, if it's an insomnia issue as well?
It sort of depends from patient to patient. Some patients feel very sleepy and relaxed after the treatment. And for those patients, in fact, some people use it at the onset of anxiety to sort of bring immediately the anxiety level down within a few minutes, and then they feel relaxed. And for those patients, we recommend that, if they have trouble falling asleep, that they can use the treatment before bedtime. The treatment, by the way, is 30 minutes long, so they would use that prior to bedtime. Some people, on the other hand, feel quite energized, like they just drank a cup of coffee. And for those patients, we obviously recommend that they do it maybe earlier, like at midday or so that they don't have trouble falling asleep. There is a little bit of experimentation involved. So initially, at least, we recommend that patients use it midday, and then they figure out how they respond to it immediately post-treatment and then they can adjust.
Gotcha. And it does make sense that everybody is different, so you may react differently. Perhaps you have more anxiety issues than you do insomnia or vice versa, and that's what, of course, you need to work with it. How does it compare, I'm kind of hearing my audience in my head, to drug-based therapies then? If folks are on various medications currently and want to consider a device such as this?
So obviously, this device needs to be used in consultation with a provider, with a doctor, especially if the patient is already on antidepressants or on some sort of drugs. The good news is that unlike incorporating a new drug into already existing drug, you have to consider the the contraindications and also the adverse events, or how this new drug is going to react to the old drug.
Yeah.
With this device, patients, because it works completely different, it's not a chemical reaction, patients can use this device in conjunction with drugs. So for instance, an example of use of the patient that's on drugs would be a patient is using the drug, but the drug maybe is not effective anymore, or it's losing its efficacy over time. We see and hear it all the time, and then the patient can try to supplement the treatment with device like Cervella. Or maybe the patient wants to get off the drug because the side effects are, severe or they're significant, and then they can work with the provider to start using the device and maybe slowly work the drug off.
Got you. So for those listening or watching this video and saying, well, so you're not telling someone stop your medication and just go with this device, that's not happening. That's not the case. But again, the importance of working with your physician to be able to determine if you're going to be able to wean off some medication, some drug therapy, and see how this works. That also makes sense. I'm wondering, why isn't this type of device maybe used as the first line treatment, or do you expect that at some point it will be, unless Big Pharma gets in the way again, to be able to say, rather than drug someone, let's try this first?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we ask that question ourselves. I will preface this by saying that outside of the United States, devices like that are used as a first-line treatments. And in Europe and Asia, these devices are sold often in pharmacy. So wow. Just like blood pressure monitors in the United States, you can walk to a pharmacy and obtain one of those devices.
Sure.
In the U.S., I think historically, pharmacological treatments were often considered, and still are considered, first-line treatment for pretty much everything. So, and people are not naturally thinking, oh, should I look at the medical device to treat a treatment, to treat a condition? But I think the combination of the fact that some historical aspects and also the fact that the marketing budgets and just simply the size of the companies like ourselves are just minuscule in comparison to what the pharmacological companies are. We just don't have the marketing budget and an outreach that is needed to
Sure.
promote a device like that.
And that's, I think, Bart, the sad story. You're very hitting the nail on the head, very accurate there, because in many cases, especially what we're talking about here, it seems to me that a medical device is a far better option than just saying, oh, give them drugs. It's just, make them mellow out. It's more antidepressants, please, that kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the answer. Again, Big Pharma would argue. But the point is, we should look into these devices. Talk to your doctors about what's available on the market for any condition that you may have before just saying, let's solve it with a pill. And I mean, that's my opinion, but I think it's probably a very valid one at this point. What does Cervella cost?
So the Cervella costs approximately $600, depending on if we have any promotions going on. And that's pretty much a one-time purchase. There are no really additional maintenance required items other than periodical gel replacements that is required because patient needs to use a little bit of conductive gel on the electrodes. And then periodically, maybe annually replace the ear cushions, which they are the electrodes, because they would wear out over time.
Got you. So no subscription fees or anything of that nature, no monthly fees in order to use such a thing, but figure around $600. But if it's going to solve an anxiety and insomnia problem, I'm sure it's worth every penny.
And the important aspect that I want to stress out, if it doesn't work, we will take it back, because we understand that just like drugs are not effective for everybody, this device will not work for everybody. So we do give the 30-day evaluation period. If it doesn't work, send it back. Yeah. So and unlike the drugs, also I would say that you can stop it immediately and don't have to wean yourself off like with the drugs. If it doesn't work, just stop using it and send it back to us.
Well, Bart, kudos to you guys. It sounds like you're doing all the right things, and I very much like the fact that folks can send it back if it doesn't work for them. Again, everyone's different. So maybe it works for some people and maybe it doesn't for others. Do you find that some folks are able to use the same device for others in the family? Again, we're prefacing with, physician advice or that sort of thing. But can one device be shared?
Certainly, the device can be shared. There's nothing in the software or with the device that prohibits it by sharing it. Of course, in a clinical setting, we have to worry about cross-contamination from patient to patient because the device touches the patient. But if it's a family situation, then typically people don't worry about that kind of a thing.
Yeah, very true. We invite you to visit their website, cervella.us. It's CERVELLA.us. Of course, we'll get you there to Bart's site, and you'll see what he and his team are doing when you visit us at intotomorrow.com. President and CEO of Innovative Neurological Devices, and it certainly sounds just like that's the case. Bart, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. We'll stay on track and stay in touch. Let us know how things continue to progress, and we hope it helps more and more people every day.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure. Bart Waclawik is the President CEO of Innovative Neurological Devices. Again, visit them at cervella.us. We'll get you there. Stop by intotomorrow.com. I'm Dave Graveline, bringing you further into tomorrow. Stay tuned. Much more to come right here on the Advanced Media Network.